"I know the English have tea at 3, she said. And there it was, laid out on the table in the music room at the back of the house. Finger sandwiches, crudité, slices of fruitcake. Beside it, in the corner armchair, was her husband, a soft-spoken man in the plaid shirt and slacks that are the uniform of retired Americans the world over. He had a folder of notes laid out on his knee. Dates, names, the details in proper order, as if he were preparing to teach a class on his own past. I asked him why he wanted to tell his story. He furrowed his brow. Perhaps, he reasoned, it would be a way of explaining himself to his estranged son, the offspring of his first marriage. Maybe the boy would read it and better understand his father's motives, the road he took at the end of the 1960s from protest against an unjust war to participation in something darker and more outlandish. Certainly there was much to understand. Half a century later, some of it was still unclear to Jim. "I didn't intend to do anything against the government," he said, tears swimming in his eyes. "But then Bobby Kennedy was shot. Martin Luther King was shot, and I didn't feel the sense of security that I had before." The anxiety brought him to the decision that forms the common link among most of the people in this story. It was the choice upon which an American generation was skewered, whether to accept a kind invitation from the government to fight in the Vietnam War, or to decline that offer and accept the consequences. Many men refused and suffered little, but Jim was part of a group that trod a more difficult path. Men who were already in uniform, men who deserted from the military and went into exile in Sweden, the only non-communist country in Europe that offered asylum to those who refused to fight. Jim could recount his steps toward that choice. He could remember the sinking feeling of knowing that he was to be sent from his desk job into action on the front line. He could give a good and comprehensible account of his arrival in Stockholm, the life he led among the 1,000-strong community of deserters and draft resistors who'd made the same decision. How he'd become a prominent member of the American Deserters Committee, a group of radical exiles who sowed so much discord that many Swedes suspected they were a CIA front. Other details, though, were less sharply focused. How would he become a revolutionary, living underground in 1970s America? What about the business with the nunchuckers? Or his prison sentence? Or the phalanx of Cuban frogmen lurking in the Hudson River, waiting for the order to kill? What about the men from Operation Chaos? Jim McGurty was right to be confused. His life remains part of a story that began 50 years ago, but was never quite ended, thanks to the unhealed wounds of Vietnam, the secret strategies of the American and Swedish intelligence services, and the influence of a cult run by one of the weirdest personalities in American political history, a management consultant from New Hampshire who, even today, at the age of 94, wants you to know that Britain started the Vietnam War, that the Beatles were created as an instrument of psychological warfare, and that he is the only man in the world who can save you, me, Jim, Christina, and everyone from the genocidal ambitions of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. "So," said Christina, with the directness of someone who has spent a career as a professional copy editor, "how are you going to structure this? What are you going to begin with?" "Maybe," I said, "with the brainwashing part, the moment when everything went nuts." It happened in the Mark Ballroom, a shabby venue on the west side of Union Square in Manhattan, on January 3, 1974. In those days, New York was a city sliding toward bankruptcy. Thanks to the oil crisis, it was also brutally cold. Gas stations across America were closed for business. Speed limits were brought down to reduce fuel consumption. Thermostats were dialed down. Store windows darkened early. Inside the ballroom, they were already shivering. The events of that night would be beyond reconstruction, had Christina not been present, taking notes, and had the political organization to which she and Jim belonged not had a mania for converting its proceedings into print. Despite its achingly dull name, the National Caucus